Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to this very important all-inclusive meeting. This ceremony, the signing ceremony of the Government of Egypt and the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for 5 years, 2023-2027. إنه لمن دواعي سروري أن أرحب بدولة رئيس مجلس الوزراء معالي الدكتور مصطفى مدبولي، معالي الدكتورة رانيا المشاط وزيرة التعاون الدولي، السيدة إلينا بانوفا المنسقة المقيمة للأمم المتحدة في مصر، أصحاب المعالي السادة الوزراء، رؤساء الهيئات الحكومية، السادة أعضاء مجلسي الشيوخ والنواب الموقرين، السيدات والسادة ممثلي هيئات ووكالات الأمم المتحدة في مصر، رؤساء وممثلي البعثات الدبلوماسية في مصر، أصحاب السعادة السفراء ورؤساء البعثات والشركاء المتميزين، ممثلو المجتمع المدني والأوساط الأكاديمية والقطاع الخاص.
On the public sector, very good evening to you. It's a great honor to share you today, celebrating the partnership between Egypt and the United Nations, as we are celebrating signing the framework of development cooperation of sustainable development during the period between 2023-2027. It's the main tool to plan and to implement the UN activities here in Egypt with full cooperation among different concerned bodies in the development area, reflecting the goals of the Egyptian government and the national initiatives, and to support the reform procedures implemented by the state for finance and development. And worth mentioning that this week witnessed the announcement of two grand strategies to reflect the importance of international partnerships to fulfill the needs of the citizens. This strategy and the strategy with the World Bank.
An honor to be part of the signing ceremony between the government of Egypt and the UN and everyone related to sustainable development. ويشرفني اليوم.
Also, I'm honored to start the activities of our program, to have a documentary detailing all the activities taking place here in Egypt and their impact on all the citizens. And this documentary is prepared by the UN family here in Egypt with full cooperation with the International Cooperation Ministry. And it's really saying a lot about many results of the activities implemented here. They are all documented during visits, field visits to development projects in March and April in different governorates like in Minya, Damietta, Alexandria, and Aswan. During these field visits, we shed more light on the development, on the Egyptian citizen, and also it really reflected the great efforts exerted by the Egyptian government and also the UN agencies in different programs across the nation.
We will be watching together a documentary produced by the UN family in Egypt and the Ministry of International Cooperation. Some of the success stories in Minya, Alexandria, Damietta, and Aswan. والآن, let's watch it together.
العلاقة دي مش علاقة بين دولة ومؤسسة، ولكن هي علاقة بين مصر والعالم. منظمة الأمم المتحدة هي من أهم المنظمات المبنية على التعاون متعدد الأطراف. سنة 1945 يمكن مصر من أول الدول اللي مضت على ميثاق الأمم المتحدة.
In 1948,
UN started its operation here in Egypt. The first UN agency that put, its foot on Egypt's soil was UNESCO.
Everything started in 1959, 40 different countries trying to cooperate with something that was absolutely extraordinary and unique, because you can see that 22 big monuments were transferred. And that was really one of the most outstanding kind of pieces of the history of multilateralism.
ده كان دليل كبير جدا انه التعاون متعدد الاطراف هو احد المناهج المهمه اللي بتتبعها جمهوريه مصر العربيه من زمان، مش بس في العمل الاقتصادي ولكن ايضا في العمل التراثي والعمل العلمي والعمل الاثري.
Throughout all these many years, Egypt positioned itself as one of the most proactive member states on the global arena.
الإطار الاستراتيجي بين جمهورية مصر العربية والأمم المتحدة هو بيدفع بالتنمية المستدامة، وإحنا بنتكلم على التنمية المستدامة بيبقى دايما في يمكن 4 محاور رئيسية: التنمية الاقتصادية، الاستثمار في رأس المال البشري، المواطن في الأساس، الموارد الطبيعية في الدولة وبالتالي الجزء اللي له علاقة بالمناخ، أخيرا وليس آخرا المرأة والفتيات. أضفنا عليها في الاستراتيجية الجديدة الحوكمة. دول 5 محاور مهمين جدا وهيكونوا الأساس في استراتيجيتنا مع الأمم المتحدة خلال ال5 سنوات القادمة 2023 ل 2027.
As we are concluding the old cooperation framework, we want to showcase what UN is doing on the ground, to go to the field with partners and to see how these projects and programs change the life of the people.
You can see the enthusiasm in the children. They want to come here. World Food Program is working with the government, with various ministries, be it with the Ministry of Social Solidarity, be it with the Ministry of Education, be it with the Ministry of Local Development, health, as all integrators, so that we have a coordinated process. This model has worked with more than 120,000 children like these, and we're already present in 3,000 community schools. And we're working with the government every day and the local governorates to increase it and take it to scale.
مشروع تعزيز تنفيذ استراتيجية السكان. احنا مش بنتكلم على السكان كعدد، لكن السكان كنوعية، مستوى التعليم، المعيشة، قدرة السكان ان هم يحققوا ذاتهم، يحققوا احلامهم. فلو احنا محتاجين ان احنا يكون في مفاهيم بتتغير عن عدد الأسرة، عن دور المرأة في الأسرة، لازم نبتدي ده في سن صغير، ان الشباب يكبر ويكون هو اللي بيصنع التغيير.
Very often, especially the juvenile justice systems are neglected. Although, according to international laws, juveniles should have separate institutions. In Egypt, we are currently working in 9 institutions, but our ambition is to expand this program to all institutions. And I think we should not forget it is about rebuilding the life of an individual. The positive change will also have an impact on the family and the entire community.
طبعا احنا جدا فخورين ببرنامج رائع ممتاز بجمهورية مصر العربية، وهو برنامج خدمة استشارية صحية للشباب. اليوم أنا أتكلم من مركز الطب العام بمحافظة دمياط، وجدا فخورين بالإنجازات اللي تمت في هذا المركز على مدى السنوات الماضية. هذا المركز إحدى المراكز الموجودة على مستوى جمهورية مصر العربية من 2500 مركز نموذجي يقدمون خدمات متكاملة مدمجة ضمن البرامج الرعاية الصحية الأولية.
هي أكتر حاجة فرقها كان واضح في عيادات النساء ورعاية الأمومة والطفولة أو رعاية الحوامل، إن إحنا منعنا ناس كتير في السن اللي هو الصغير إن هم يتجوزوا وتعرضوا للمشاكل الصحية اللي ممكن تحصل لهم لو اتجوزوا في سن مبكر.
UNICEF is working to ensure that communities are getting holistic support. In the area of health, we are providing support in maternal and child health related issues, so we're empowering the doctors, nurses, and also community health workers.
من خلال المشروع اللي بنقدمه لدعم الصحة الإنجابية بالتعاون مع وزارة الصحة في 9 محافظات وعدد من الجمعيات الأهلية، قدرنا نقدم خدمات من خلالها تم الكشف على حوالي 100 ست كانت حامل، وقدرت من خلال الحصول على حزمة الوقاية العدوى من الأم الجنين أنها تلد وتجيب طفل سليم 100%، وحولهم بدل ما يبقى أسرة عندها ضحية إلى أسرة منتجة وأسرة إيجابية في المجتمع.
Rabeha has trained 1,100 women on how to get jobs, and 30% of them have gotten jobs. One of the most moving aspects for me was listening to the young women and women my age saying, I'm ready for change, I have great ideas, I want to move forward, please help me move forward. And these ideas are green, they're smart, they're techno.
الست لما يجي لها فلوس بتصرفها على بيتها وعيالها وبتحسن مستواهم المعيشي. انا هديكي وهعلمك وهدربك، افردي جناحاتك بقى واطلعي.
في مصر التطوع هو موجود فينا بالغريزه، يعني احنا ساعات بنحس ان احنا محظوظين كبرنامج ان احنا مش محتاجين نعمل مجهود كبير قوي ان احنا نقنع الناس بالتطوع، بس يمكن مؤخرا كمان بدانا نشوف انه التطوع بدا يظهر بشكل اكبر، ازاي ان هي بتاثر بشكل كبير قوي في تنميه المجتمع اللي انا فيه.
In Egypt overall there are about 290,000 registered refugees and asylum seekers. Here you'll see that there's a computer center because we know that refugees and asylum seekers are here in Egypt, but we also need that they build their future, whether it's here or elsewhere.
وشفنا ازاي المستفيدين والمستفيدات من اللاجئين والمصريين فتحوا مشاريعهم، بس برضه ازاي طوروها وازاي ان هم كمان بيحلموا ان هم يطوروها اكتر واكتر.
What is beautiful about the work that colleagues from different agencies are doing here, bringing together different refugees, people from certain set of vulnerabilities, refugees, but also Egyptians living in unprivileged situations, and bring them together also to create the social cohesion within the different communities.
احنا في المركز الطبي العام في دمياط الجديده بيجي لنا لاجئين كتير من معظم الدول الموجوده، سوريين، ليبيين، يمنيين، عراقيين، بياخدوا الخدمه كامله اللي المصريين بياخدوها بدون اي نقص ولا اي تفرقه في المعامله ولا اي تفرقه في اي حاجه.
Access to information in this day of age is crucial to make sure that people are enabled, empowered, and included in societies. People who are on the vulnerable groups in specific are segments of societies that have been left out and have not largely been unconnected, not only in Egypt but globally. And so there's a big effort globally, including ITU's Partners to Connect initiative, where we are trying to make sure that by the year 2030, all people who are unconnected are connected.
في مشروعات خاصة بالأمم المتحدة فيها تنمية ريفية، فيها بعد خاص بالتكيف لأنه في ضم حيازات لصغار المزارعين، فيها استخدام أمثل للمياه، فيها تحول من استخدام السولار والديزل إلى الطاقة الشمسية، ودي نماذج وخبرات بنحاول نعممها في قرى أخرى.
المشروع وراني ازاي انا اعمل طريقه زراعيه اللي انا اشتغل عليها. قبلي كنت مديون وبعدي سددت على الاقل ديني، وان شاء الله في الخلفه اللي طالعه هيكون معي فلوس يمكن نروح الحج ان شاء الله باذن الله.
المشروع بيستهدف 30 قريه من القرى الجديده. بنفتكر ان المشروع ده قابل لانه يتمدد. شفنا حياه كريمه، وهي حياه كريمه كل اهدافها تتلاقى مع اهداف مثل هذا المشروع، لأنه مشروع منهجه هو التنمية الريفية المتكاملة.
شركة سيمي كريم اشتغلنا معاها من أكثر من 10 سنين، قدرنا نعمل نموذج مصري لنظم إدارة الطاقة مماثل لشهادة ايزو 50001. قدرنا إن احنا نوفر الكفاءات والكوادر المحلية اللي تقدر تشتغل مع القطاع الصناعي علشان تطبيق هذه النظم. قدرنا إن احنا نساعد عدد كبير جدا من الشركات إن هم عندهم سياسات خاصة بإدارة الطاقة، ويبقى عندهم الوحدات الداخلية اللي هي بتشتغل على رصد استخدامات استهلاكات الطاقة، ازاي يبقى في استخدامات أخرى للطاقة الجديدة والمتجددة.
Since 2009, the UN Development Program has worked with the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation to test low-cost techniques to protect the coast from sea level rise. And based on studies and consultations, a nature-based solution, which was actually proposed by the local communities, was chosen to protect those vulnerable areas and their people. And this is protecting up to 17 million people living in vulnerable areas. I know that the government is looking at this project as a flagship of what can be done in terms of adaptation and early warning.
We are here to support the development agenda and the national priorities of Egypt, very clearly. We get a lot of support from the governor, the governor's office, to exactly reach out and then engage with the community members. I really hope that as UN, we are contributing to this more sustainable, more resilient, more prosperous Egypt with the programs and projects that we do, which are part of this new cooperation framework.
اما بنتكلم مع المستفيدين بنحس قد ايه حصل تاثير عليهم. لو سيدات واخدين قروض عينيه بيقدروا ان هم يزودوا دخل اسرهم، لو بنشوف الفلاحين والمزارعين النهارده قدروا ان هم يزودوا المحصول، وده ايضا بيساهم في زياده الدخول. النهارده الاولاد في المدرسه المجتمعيه كانت برضو مشروع له خصوصيه جدا، لانه أولاد عندهم طموح يحاولوا في ظل ظروف اجتماعية صعبة جدا إن هم يكونوا موجودين في المدرسة. بحب أشكر جميع شركاء التنمية في مصر، أصدقائنا من الدول اللي بيساهموا معانا في تمويل الاستراتيجية السابقة وهيقوموا بتمويل الاستراتيجية القادمة إن شاء الله.
This film brought many memories back to me. I've worked with the United Nations system for 24 years with UNICEF and with WHO. So it was very moving and really حقيقة منظمات العالمية اللي بتعمل في مصر بتعمل بحب لمساندة الحكومة في كل برامجها. يا رب بالتوفيق بالاتفاقية الجديدة. الآن أدعو الدكتورة رانيا المشاط وزيرة التعاون الدولي والرئيس الشريك للجنة التسيير المشتركة المعنية بمتابعة تنفيذ إطار التعاون لإلقاء كلمتها الافتتاحية على سيادتكم. ستتفضل سيادتها. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister of International Cooperation, رانيا المشاط, please.
In the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful, Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Egyptian cabinet, Mrs. Elena Pikova, the UN resident coordinator, ladies and gentlemen, the presidents and the chiefs of the NGOs and the UN agencies and the representatives of the other member states, all the parliamentary speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you in this event, in this very important summit, which is launching a new phase of partnership between us and the UN, the United Nations, as we are celebrating together the ceremony of the framework of the partnership between Egypt and the United Nations in sustainable development cooperation during the period between 2023-2027. I also extend my thanks to Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly to attend the ceremony with us, to witness together the launching of new strategies, to prepare new strategies of development cooperation with all our partners, and also to establish new partnerships for integrated development cooperation framework in the coming 5 years to fulfill the needs and priorities of Egypt and the needs of the Egyptian citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, what we witness today is not far from reality with all the challenges and difficulties, and we all witnessed the documentation of real models of the projects and programs implemented on the ground, implemented by all the concerned bodies, and the NGOs are playing such a pivotal role here in Egypt. So we should cooperate and coordinate efforts together, and this is exactly what's going on and what's implemented by the Egyptian government. Also, the Ministry of International Cooperation is magnifying and doubling the efforts exerted to benefit from all the partnerships implemented implemented on the ground. Egypt and the United Nations are enjoying sustainable partnerships. Also, Egypt also appreciates the sustainable development cooperation and partnerships, which are instilling the cooperation among different peoples and also maintaining international security, realizing social development and preserving human rights, and also facing all the development challenges like the climate change. And also this agrees with the Charter of the United Nations. And also here I'd like to appreciate the efforts of the Foreign Ministry and also our consulates and embassies outside Egypt and all the serious and loyal efforts exerted by them. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to review together the developments of the relations between Egypt and other UN agencies. The United Nations started its activities in 1948. There are 32 UN agencies related to the United Nations, including the regional bureaus and also the agencies. During the past years, the frameworks of partnership developed a lot, taking into consideration all the global changes and the requirements and also the economic developments and the environmental developments and changes. Also to instill all these partnerships, we signed partnerships from 2002 to 2006. Also 3 other programs were launched, last but not least, between 2018 and 2022, and through it we realize a lot of goals: sustainable development, social justice, sustainable natural resources, and empowering women via 4 acting groups with a joint chairmanship between Egypt and UN concerned bodies. And also regarding the projects and programs implemented all over Egypt, we find that they are covering all provinces and governorates, including Greater Cairo, the Delta provinces, and Upper Egypt and Sinai, to reach the most needy brackets. And I'd like to thank Dr. Hala Saeed, Her Excellency Minister of Planning and Economic Development, and Dr. Niveen Qabash, Minister of Social Solidarity, and Dr. Yasmin Fuad, Minister of Environment, Dr. Maya Morsi, the President of the National Council for Women, for their serious efforts during the past 5 years. Also, the ladies and gentlemen who are the members of the entities I mentioned, who are exerting the utmost efforts to help those who are responsible for the whole programs on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, following the scientific protocols, we are exerting the utmost efforts to benefit from all the programs which were implemented till the year 2022. 6 recommendations were released. First, to build on what was achieved on the ground, to coordinate and cooperate together, the interagency support. Third, planning and implementation, boosting partnership with NGOs and the private sector to realize the sustainable development goals, boosting investments related to sustainable development. And we are going, Mrs. Elena Panova is going also to review some of the results which were implemented from 2018 to 2022 to reach the new strategic partnership which we celebrate today. This framework of partnership between Egypt and the UN is considered one of the results of developing the partnership between Egypt and the UN, facing all the challenges facing Egypt, and to realize sustainable development goals, and to realize the promise of the United Nations. Also, it's coordinating with the Egyptian government efforts, also with the efforts of the structural production program of the Egyptian government. This is to coincide with the Sustainable Development Goals, to follow the path of development here in Egypt. Third, to follow up of the regional and international development program. The new program is coping with the current challenges and changes to take into consideration the priorities of all the partners, to implement and to have this full coordination and cooperation among different sectors, and to integrate with the presidential initiatives realizing sustainable development goals of the United Nations, and to integrate with the regional programs of different agencies and international organizations and development agencies. And here I'd like to indicate that the full coordination among different sectors, it extended for 2 years, reaching May 2021, in which many entities were participating, having workshops with different concerned bodies, more than 40 partners, 28 UN partners, and also the permanent delegation of Egypt in the United Nations, the non-governmental organizations which has such a pivotal role in reaching the most needy brackets. Ladies and gentlemen, this framework is coinciding with the different National Strategy for Human Rights and Sustainable Energy 2035 and other strategies implemented by Egypt. Also, as you are following, I'd like to point at also the program, and it's coinciding with Hayat Karima, this presidential initiative in all to serve more than 1.5 million citizens. What I reviewed together with you is to clarify the results of all the efforts exerted by us in partnership with the United Nations and our partners during also the sustainable programs, to build on it, to fasten the results of sustainable development programs, and because of this we reached the strategic programs to achieve social solidarity, sustainable economic development, governance, empowering women. As you are following up, we compared all these requirements together, and I'd like here to stop and to speak more in detail about empowering women, and to speak about the efforts exerted to make it a sustainable effort, whether by the Egyptian government or the National Council for Women. Women are getting their rights according to what's written in the Egyptian constitution. And finally, we would like to move forward to realize all the goals, and we are working hard to boost the Egyptian role regionally and internationally, to repeat what was achieved on the ground and to transfer it to other developing countries, and to boost the cooperation South-South. We witnessed such an example regarding this in cooperation with different national institutions and all partners, and I see the opportunity to thank Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly and my colleagues, also Elena Pekova, the UN Resident Coordinator, all the governors, also the general directors of the UN agencies, and all our partners and the representatives of the NGOs and the private sector. I really thank them all for being with us today, and we are looking forward to achieve more on the ground to boost the Egyptian path in sustainable development, and we appreciate your cooperation with us to realize sustainable development with the United Nations in the coming 5 years to be an active sustainable development cooperation path.
شكرا معالي الدكتورة رانيا المشاط على هذا العرض القيم والملاحظات الملهمة التي توضح أوجه التعاون والمشاركة في تعزيز العلاقات بين مصر والأمم المتحدة. Thank you, Your Excellency, for highlighting the importance of the work with the UN agencies. Thank you for highlighting the 6 recommendations, all the Sustainable Development Goals, the coordination that took over 2 years, and how all-inclusive it was, including all partners. اسمحوا لي الآن أن أقدم المتحدث التالي، وهي السيدة إلينا بانوفا، المنسق المقيم للأمم المتحدة في مصر. المنسق المقيم للأمم المتحدة هو أعلى ممثل لمنظومة الأمم المتحدة بأكملها على مستوى القطري، ويتم تعيينه من قبل الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة. أحد أهم مسؤوليات المنسق المقيم للأمم المتحدة في توحيد جهود جميع وكالات الأمم المتحدة في البلاد من أجل النهوض بخطة أعمال التنمية 2030. شاركت السيدة بانوفا جنبا إلى جنب مع معالي الدكتورة رانيا المشاط في قيادة تطوير إطار التعاون الجديد الذي نحن هنا بصدد الاحتفال به اليوم. تحت قيادتها قامت 26 وكالة تابعة للأمم المتحدة الموقعة اليوم بتطوير إطار التعاون مع كافة الشركاء التنمية، وعلى رأسهم الحكومة والشركاء الثنائيين والمتعددي الأطراف والمؤسسات المالية الدولية والمجتمع المدني والقطاع الخاص، وكذلك الأوساط الأكاديمية ومراكز الفكر. فلتتفضل السيدة بانوفا لإلقاء كلمتها. The UN Resident Coordinator in Egypt, Elena Panova.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly, Your Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation, Your Excellencies, Ministers, Governors of Egypt, dear representatives and distinguished members of the House of Representatives and Senators, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, dear partners. On behalf of the United Nations, I thank you for taking the time to join us today in marking this extraordinary occasion, once every 5 years, of the signing of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. The cooperation framework is anchored in national development priorities and Egypt's Vision 2030. Its implementation is co-led by the government and the United Nations, with the overarching goal to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm very glad that with the video we watched earlier, we were able to show a glimpse of what that cooperation and partnership looks like on the ground. This video illustrates an important truth, that progress on the Sustainable Development Goals is not about lines on a graph or even words on paper. It is about healthy mothers and babies, children and youth learning the skills to fulfill their potential, parents who can feed their families. It's about farmers being able to cultivate their lands in a way that respects nature. It's about women providing for the needs of their families through businesses they build. It's about protecting communities against the rising sea levels. It's about all people, enjoying their human rights, their right to live a decent life in dignity. This is what the cooperation framework represents when it is brought to life. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now zoom in on the cooperation framework itself allow me to cite the relevant United Nations General Assembly resolution, which features the cooperation framework as, and here I will quote, the most important instrument for planning and implementation of the UN development activities at country level in support to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, unquote. So it enables the United Nations country team, the government, and all partners to bring to life the Sustainable Development Goals at country level, in the lives of people. And allow me here to pause and sincerely thank Your Excellency, Dr. Rania, for your inspiring and tireless leadership in developing this cooperation framework on behalf of the government. You and your team have been the driving force behind these efforts. And the ambition and quality of this document, in a way, is a testament to your engagement, so I thank you. Distinguished participants, the new generation of cooperation frameworks forms a centerpiece of the reform of the United Nations development system, a key priority of the United Nations Secretary General. And in line with his vision, I'm happy to report that we mobilized the United Nations system to come on board. 26 UN entities based in Egypt and also operating from their headquarters have jointly worked on this cooperation framework, and they all will sign today. This represents an increase of 7 UN entities compared to the previous cooperation framework. So I'm very proud of this commitment to Egypt by the United Nations leadership at country level and also at headquarters. For each of the 5 priority areas of the cooperation framework, we had a lead head of agency leading the development of the substance, and I'm very grateful to my colleagues for investing their time and effort to produce this high-level quality document. Dear partners, in the cooperation framework, we unpack the 3 dimensions of sustainable development: social, economic, and environmental. So first, we address the social dimension with focus on, and I would like to have the slide. Yes, okay. So, first we address the social dimension with a focus on strengthening human capital and access to basic services. This includes education, health, food and nutrition, social protection, and assistance to migrants and refugees. So you could see on the screen a snapshot of the first pillar of the cooperation framework. So on the top, you see the UN development strategies and plans that guide our work. You see the main areas of cooperation. You see the intended results that we aim to achieve during this 5-year period. And also you see the number of government, both government and UN entities that will work on that specific pillar. And at the bottom, you see the sustainable development goals to which this pillar will contribute to. So, second, we look at the economic dimension with focus on inclusive and environmentally sustainable economic development, driven by industrialization, green and inclusive growth, decent jobs, digitalization, and also integrating the informal economy. Building on Egypt's huge potential for entrepreneurship, we seek to invest in medium and small enterprises, entrepreneurial skills, and support the integration of businesses into the regional and also global value chains. Third,
we have the environmental direction. Okay, very good. I don't see it behind me. The environmental dimension, calling for climate resilience and efficiency of natural resource management, focusing on early warning, preparedness, adaptation, just transition to green circular economy, biodiversity, inclusive agricultural systems, and also inclusive and climate resilient urban development. The cooperation will act as a catalyst to deliver the climate ambitions at country level that the COP27 put on the global agenda. And I would be remiss not to congratulate the government on your leadership, delivering on a landmark agreement to establish a loss and damage fund. Many were doubtful, but you defied the skeptics and delivered on climate justice for the most vulnerable countries. And this commitment to climate action is well anchored in the cooperation framework, in support to the ambitious national climate change strategy and initiatives such as NOAFI on the nexus of water, food, and energy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm also very glad to report that we have a new priority area in the cooperation framework, and this is on transparency, good governance, and rule of law, presenting an important opportunity to expand our cooperation. It focuses on support to strengthening institutions and public administration, anti-corruption and accountability, access to justice, and also international cooperation. Last, but certainly not least, our cooperation framework is one of the few ones globally with a dedicated pillar on the empowerment of women and girls. This encompasses women's economic empowerment, women's civic engagement, and leadership, countering all forms of violence against women and girls, and a focus on services and opportunities for adolescent girls. Dear partners, the new generation of cooperation frameworks builds on collective assessment and analysis of the UN system on the progress, gaps, and opportunities vis-à-vis a country's commitment to achieving the SDGs, the UN norms and standards, and also the principles of the United Nations Charter. This analysis identified key groups at risk of being left behind that are included in this framework. In this way, the cooperation framework represents a commitment to the people of this country, particularly to the most marginalized and vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, we signed this cooperation framework at a very challenging moment for Africa and also for Egypt. The African continent, and Egypt specifically, is witnessing a series of cascading crises that threaten to undermine hard-fought development gains for current and also future generations. Egypt is faced with social-economic fallouts of COVID-19, the knock-on effects of the war in Ukraine, the climate crisis, and the unfolding conflict in Sudan. None of this Egypt caused, but it is faced with the consequences. For the UN, this means that, and as Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed put it recently, we are now asked to do development in emergency mode. This means the implementation of the cooperation framework will remain responsive to new developments as they arise. Going forward, we need to be at the top of our game and retain the agility to adapt. Dear partners, with the cooperation framework to be signed today, we now need to deliver. From our side, we will mobilize the full range of UN assets, providing integrated policy advice and normative support, integrating our convening power, while continuing to deliver direct support on the ground to those in need. But this cooperation framework cannot be actioned by the UN in isolation. Its successful implementation will require joint commitment to action and also political leadership shown by this government to commit to Vision 2030 and its ownership over Sustainable Development Agenda. Leadership of the bilateral and multilateral development partners, fostering coherence, transparency, and also focus on results. Leadership of the private sector to integrate sustainability into the core of their business operations. Leadership of the civil society to reach those at risk of being left behind and give them a voice. And academia to provide thought leadership to inform our priorities. So ultimately, the litmus test for the success of the cooperation framework will be our collective ability to lead and come together around concrete partnerships to deliver for the people we serve. I will conclude with the words of the United Nations Secretary General Guterres that continue inspiring me. And here I quote, "We will never, ever give up on making this world better for everyone, everywhere." I thank you for your partnership.
Shukran, thank you. Thank you to the UN Resident Coordinator, Elena Panova. الحقيقة سيدة بانوفا نشكرها على هذه الكلمة حول الشراكة المستمرة والقوية بين مصر والأمم المتحدة. قالت الاتفاقية دي هي أهم آلة للتخطيط للتنمية المستدامة لكي تصل الأهداف للمواطن. شكر خاص كان للدكتورة رانيا وفريق العمل لكل 26 كيان من كيانات الأمم المتحدة التي ستوقع اليوم. تهنئة الحكومة المصرية على كوب 27 وعلى اللوس اند دامج فند اللي هو صندوق الخسائر والأضرار اللي كان في كوب 27. قالت التوقيع على الاتفاقية لحظة حازمة لإفريقيا ولمصر. لمصر بالذات عشان الأضرار الاقتصادية اللي حصلت بسبب الكوفيد، الحرب في أوكرانيا، أزمة المناخ، الصراع في السودان، كلها حاجات مصر ملهاش إيد فيها لكن بتتضرر منها. شكرت كل الشركاء وأنهت كلمتها بلن نتوقف أبداً عن جعل هذا العالم عالم أفضل. يمثل إطار التعاون نجاحاً كبيراً لشراكة الأمم المتحدة مع الحكومة المصرية كما أنه أداة محورية ورئيسية لمنظومة الأمم المتحدة. مع أخذ ذلك كله في الاعتبار دعونا نشاهد كلمة مسجلة للسيدة أمينة محمد نائبة الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة بهذه المناسبة.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. We are at a critical juncture for the Sustainable Development Goals. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is now halfway along its path, but our progress has faltered, and there is so much more to do. I would like to commend the government of Egypt for leading the development of this ambitious cooperation framework. The new generation of cooperation frameworks provide a transformative pathway for achieving the SDGs in Egypt, providing greater resilience to socioeconomic shocks and integrated policy advice in response to national priorities. I commend the government and specifically the Minister for International Cooperation, Your Excellency, Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, for leading an inclusive and robust process in developing this cooperation framework with 27 ministries and government agencies and a wide variety of stakeholders. I welcome the ambition of our joint work with national counterparts to take our efforts to scale and accelerate the SDGs and achieve Egypt's Vision 2030. The cooperation framework also reflects the integrated nature of the SDGs. It has climate action at its heart, showing that Egypt's leadership on the global stage and at the recent COP27 goes hand in hand with its ambition at home. On the UN side, we have mobilized the full breadth of expertise and capacity to advance the SDGs in Egypt, including 26 UN entities, including those not based in the country. Now the hard part starts. Together, we will need to deliver. We must put forward large-scale programs to drive critical SDG transformations, from energy to food systems to digital technology, social protection and education, and make real our commitment to the SDGs. Projectized agency-by-agency approaches will simply not make it. For transformation, we need all hands on deck. The cooperation framework ensures that you can rely on an integrated and impactful response by the UN family to help make Egypt's vision for 2030 a reality. I wish you every success on this journey. Thank you.
رسالة نائبة الأمين العام يتردد صداها معنا اليوم، فهي تأكيد على أن مصر تخطو خطوات هامة من أجل تحقيق أجندة التنمية المستدامة. والآن إنه لمن دواعي سروري أن أعطي الكلمة لدولة رئيس مجلس الوزراء الدكتور مصطفى مدبولي لإلقاء كلمته، فليتفضل سيادته. His Excellency Egypt's Prime Minister Mostafa Madbouly.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيدات والسادة الحضور الكرام، أرحب بكم جميعا، ويسعدني أن أبدأ كلمتي إليكم بتحية واجبة إلى كل الأطراف ذات الصلة بالعمل الإنمائي والتعاون الدولي على الجهود المبذولة
related to the development here in Egypt to boost the human capital and also to rise the standard of living of all citizens, including all the migrants and refugees and asylum seekers, and to empower all the needy brackets, starting with women and youth, and to reach the basic services with high quality and adequate jobs for a better future. And this occasion which gather us today, it's considered crowning our development relations with one of the most important development partners. It's the United Nations, also the specialized UN agencies, which we do have historic relations with them based on very solid values according to the Charter of the United Nations. Egypt is really appreciating one of the pioneers in this organization since 1945. We achieved a lot through the past 5 years to meet with the many development challenges on the regional side, and the UN support, it's really there according to being one of the most important partners in many domains and in many sectors. Egypt boosted its experience in facing poverty and to improve the quality services in education and health, also to empower women and youth, and to increase the social production networks to provide the Egyptian citizen with decent life. Egypt also was one of the pioneers in regional activities to fight terrorism and illegal migration, human trafficking, in addition to its serious efforts to support international peace and security, and according to the UN agenda of 2030 for sustainable development and its 17 goals, and also it's our national vision for sustainable development and our national strategies, which we launched in cooperation with the UN programs and agencies like the National Strategy for Human Rights and the National Strategy for Climate Change. Egypt started in implementing the economic reform programs regarding with the help and support of our partners, including programs of social protection for the needy brackets, including expanding the coverage of financial Takaful and Karama program is one of the examples, and also to help the most needy families, also with the pensioners, the tax evasion for those needy brackets, in addition to providing citizens with the basic services and goods. We really recognize that there are a lot of challenges with the unprecedented shocks, with its negative repercussions on the global economy, like the COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, increasing all the economic and social challenges faced by our youth and our women, who are more than half of our citizens. Answering all these challenges, the Egyptian government took decisive efforts to boost the economic activities and to boost the social protection networks, including procedures and measures taken in cooperation with our partners amid all these global changes and challenges. In COP27, which was hosted by Egypt last year, it was such a proof of the importance of having global and international partnerships to meet with all the challenges, including the climate change. Also, we stress that Egypt is giving the utmost importance to the African future. 71% of the least developing countries are found in the Black continent, meaning that Africa needs a lot of international activities and multilateral partners to exchange experiences among different states and to boost the private sector involvement into the activities of developing the infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to point at some of the main axes to be realized and achieved on the ground by the Egyptian state, and also as priorities of the partnership between Egypt and the UN from 2023 to 2027, and also the regional programs of the specialized UN agencies which are prepared under the umbrella of the social concerned bodies in cooperation with the International Cooperation Ministry. First, the importance of investing in the human capitals to boost renovation. Egypt is concerned with improving our educational system and educational services and to pave the way for the most needy brackets. Second, we cannot achieve sustainable development without the private sector. It's very important. The Egyptian government is putting this as one of its important priorities to increase the exports. So we are committed to improve our environment of investment and to put an end to bureaucracy, to achieve transparency, and to protect the property rights. Development is not going to be achieved except with the full development of infrastructure. This is very vital to boost our competitiveness and to attract more investment and to participate in the supply chains. So, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi gave this as a first priority. And because of that, we put the development and the improvement of digital infrastructure, the networks of roads, as one of the priorities to develop. Also, the energy projects. Fourth, we consider our international partnerships as one of the access to realize sustainable development, and we do appreciate our partnership with international relations, and we are very much appreciating all the cooperation and coordination and the support we received from our international partners, particularly the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to congratulate all of you in our success to have this strategy, which is going to be implemented and financed by our development partners, multilateral partners. Also, I extend my thanks to the United Nations and its bureau in Egypt, and also the concerned UN agencies and international organizations, and of course the UN resident coordinator in Egypt, and also the Minister of International Cooperation, with all the efforts they exerted during the different stages of preparing for this important strategy. Also, I'd like to thank our permanent delegation in the United Nations and all my colleagues, the ministers, all national concerned bodies and other partners regarding the private sector, the NGOs who had the pivotal role to draw the strategy, boosting the Egyptian development path to achieve sustainable development goals. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you all.
شكرا جزيلا لدولة رئيس مجلس الوزراء الدكتور مدبولي على
We really
كلماته
thank His Excellency Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly.
هو شهادة على أهمية
Having you all today, it's really saying to what extent our partnership
shows the importance of the cooperation. Just his mere presence shows how important it is that Egypt and the United Nations are working together very closely. بالنيابة عن ضيوفنا الكرام اليوم أتقدم بالشكر لسيادتكم على التزامكم وقيادتكم الحكيمة. سننتقل الآن إلى ترتيبات مرحلة حفل التوقيع.
Now we are going to go to the
أماكنكم جالسين
procedures of the signing ceremony.
Please remain seated while the stage is being set up for the signatures. It may take a few minutes. Please remain seated.
الواقع الاقتصادي في مصر تحدي ضخم، ولازم نعترف بده ونقبله ونعالجه. اطلعوا كلموا الناس وقولوا الموقف الاقتصادي ايه. زي ما الثوره ليها ايجابيات، الثورات بيبقى ليها سلبيات على مجتمعاتها. الارهاب والفساد كانوا عاملين اضافيين في اضعاف القدره الاقتصاديه لينا. مفيش اقتصاد يبقى مفيش تعليم، يبقى مفيش صحه، يبقى مفيش بنيه اساسيه. نحاول نقلل الفجوة بين الموارد وبين المصروفات.